War will end Israel and Iran, according to the Bible. Hey guys, tonight we dive into one of the most intense and thought-provoking prophecies in biblical history. The war that will involve Israel and Iran. Picture this: an ancient prophecy, stretching back thousands of years, drawing lines between two modern nations. As tensions in the Middle East rise, it's almost as if the words written in the Bible are speaking directly to our time. Now, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to hear where you're retuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Bible speaks often of wars and rumors of wars, and one of the most significant predictions is the final conflict known as Armageddon. But what does this really mean for us today? The prophecy of Armageddon, the final battle between good and evil, is deeply tied to Israel, God's chosen land, and some believe it directly involves the country of Iran. This prophecy has long been a subject of fascination, especially in light of modern geopolitical events. The Bible's vision of Armageddon appears in the book of Revelation and other prophetic scriptures. Armageddon is often portrayed as a cataclysmic event where all nations come against Israel. While many historical scholars argue that the specifics are vague, a closer look reveals an unsettlingly precise connection to modern nations. Historians still argue whether the references to Gog and Magog point directly to Iran or whether they describe something far more symbolic. Nonetheless, some believe that in the end times, Iran could emerge as a powerful force, aligning itself with other nations in a bid to destroy Israel, just as the prophets foretold. The prophetic imagery in Revelation and Ezekiel is undeniably eerie in its resemblance to current tensions in the Middle East, with many seeing these prophecies as both a warning and a confirmation of things to come. As we step deeper into this prophecy, it's time to take a closer look at Iran's roles, relentlessly its portrayal in the Bible as a key antagonist. Historically, Iran's ancient counterpart was Persia, which the Bible often mentions as an enemy of Israel. But the story doesn't end in the ancient world, it's continuing in the geopolitical drama we witness today. Iran's current influence in the Middle East, especially its proxy wars and direct involvement in Syria, has drawn significant attention. What makes this connection so compelling is that Iran, in its modern form, bears a striking resemblance to the ancient Persian Empire. In the Book of Esther, Persia is mentioned as the empire where the Jews were exiled. In the Bible's apocalyptic literature, Persia, often seen as a symbol of future global opposition to Israel, plays an essential role. Some see Iran's nuclear ambitions and its support for groups like Hezbollah and Hamas as fulfilling the biblical prophecy of a coming adversary that will unite with other nations to invade Israel. But let's pause here for a moment and consider something a bit more fringe. There is a scholarly debate about whether the references to Persia in the Bible are literal or symbolic. Some theologians argue that Persia, as a representation of evil, could refer to a global power rather than just one nation. However, as tensions with Iran intensify, one can't help but wonder whether the Bible was simply ahead of its time in its predictions. Iran's rhetoric about wiping Israel off the map and its support for anti-Israeli factions may seem like modern politics, but many see these sentiments as eerily mirroring ancient prophecies. Iran's leadership continues to shape this narrative, positioning itself as a force opposing Israel, just as the Bible predicted. Whether or not Iran is the literal fulfillment of these prophecies remains a hotly debated topic among scholars. What is undeniable is the weight of the historical narrative and its startling parallels to the current era. As we continue our journey through the Bible's predictions, let us shift our focus to Israel itself, its current political and military landscape, and how these dynamics line up with biblical prophecy. Israel, as we know, is not just a modern state. It's a symbol of divine promise and historical continuity. From the moment of its rebirth in 1948, Israel has been the center of both geopolitical tension and religious significance. For many, the existence of Israel is a fulfillment of biblical prophecies specifically. The regathering of the Jewish people to their ancestral homeland, as foretold in texts like Ezekiel 37. But let's be real for a second. Israel's existence today is far from peaceful. Surrounded by enemies and entrenched in a decades-long conflict with its Arab neighbors, Israel's military presence is a force to be reckoned with. It has one of the most advanced defense systems in the world, and its military is consistently ranked among the strongest. For some, this might sound like an echo of biblical prophecy. In the book of Zechariah, it's written that in the last days, Israel would be a cup of trembling for the nations, a place where the world's powers would converge and struggle over control. But here's where things get interesting. Scholars debate whether Israel's strength is a sign of divine protection or just a natural consequence of being a modern military power. While some believe the Bible's promises of protection and deliverance still hold true, others argue that Israel's military might is more about strategic defense than divine intervention. Whether Israel's success in overcoming its enemies today is the fulfillment of ancient promises, or just the result of modern weaponry, is still a topic of intense discussion. At the same time, Israel's political situation complicates matters. The ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict continues to be a source of tension, both internally and with its neighbors. Even if Israel's military strength is undeniable, the peace it seeks often seems elusive. Historians and theologians alike continue to ponder whether the eventual resolution of these conflicts will mark the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, or if the war foretold in the Bible, culminating in a battle with Iran, remains on the horizon. Now let's dig into one of the most vivid and dramatic parts of biblical prophecy, the Battle of Ezekiel 38 to 39. In these chapters, the Bible paints a picture of a massive war involving Israel, where a coalition of nations, led by a mysterious figure, comes to invade the Holy Land. It's a battle that's described in great detail, and its connection to modern events is both fascinating and chilling. According to Ezekiel, the key player leading this invasion is a figure named Gog, who hails from the land of Magog. The identity of Gog and Magog has long been the subject of debate. Some believe it refers to a specific leader or empire. Others see it as a symbolic reference to a larger collective force. Now here's where things get interesting. Many scholars believe that the land of Magog could be modern-day Russia, and that Gog could be a representation of a powerful leader from that region. But what does this have to do with Iran? Some theologians argue that Iran, being a close ally of Russia in the modern world, could very well be one of the nations described in Ezekiel's prophecy. Iran, along with nations like Turkey and various Arab states, could be the ones forming the coalition mentioned in Ezekiel 38. The prophecy details how these nations will come against Israel with overwhelming force, only to be defeated in a miraculous way by God. It's a vivid portrayal of divine intervention in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Historians still argue whether the prophetic language in Ezekiel is meant to be taken literally or symbolically. Some suggest that the battle represents the struggle between good and evil, while others maintain that it is a literal event to take place in the future, no matter which view you subscribe to. The imagery of nations coming together to wage war against Israel and Israel's eventual victory through divine intervention is striking. And as we look at Iran's growing influence in the region, it's impossible not to draw parallels between this ancient prophecy and modern political realities. For many believers, the war of Ezekiel 38-39 serves as a warning and a hope, a warning about the devastating consequences of global conflict, and a hope that in the end, Israel will be delivered. Whether this prophecy points directly to Iran or another force, one thing is clear: the world is watching as these prophecies come to life. Let us now delve into the figure of Gog, a name that has echoed through centuries as one of the central antagonists in biblical prophecy. According to Ezekiel 38, Gog is a leader who comes from the land of Magog to invade Israel in the end times. But who exactly is Gog, and how does this character tie into the modern situation in the Middle East? For centuries, scholars and theologians have wrestled with this question, trying to piece together the identity of Gog. The prophecy paints a picture of a powerful figure leading a coalition of nations. And while the text doesn't give Gog a clear identity, it does give us some crucial clues. Some interpretations suggest that Gog could be a leader from Russia, considering that Magog is often thought to refer to the territories in and around modern-day Russia. However, the modern ties between Iran and Russia complicate matters. Iran has grown into one of Russia's closest allies in recent years, Iran's influence in Syria, its military presence, and its growing political ties with Russia have led some to question whether Gog represents a single leader or a coalition of nations that work together against Israel. The alliances formed in the Bible's final battle may not be so easily split between East and West. Instead, they could be united through unexpected geopolitical relationships, just as we're seeing today with the Iran-Russia connection. To add more fuel to the fire, historians still argue whether Gog represents a literal leader or whether it symbolic of a more abstract force, perhaps the very embodiment of evil in the world. Some scholars argue that Gog and Magog symbolize any power or group that opposes the divine and seeks to destroy Israel. Others believe the prophecy could refer to a specific leader in the future, especially as we see the rise of strong authoritarian figures on the world stage today. Whether Gog is a man or a collective force, the idea remains the same. He leads an overwhelming army against Israel. In Ezekiel, the prophecy foretells that this army will be miraculously defeated by divine intervention. In modern times, Iran's support for global and Buddhist movements and its ambitions for nuclear power could very well position it as a modern-day manifestation of Gog's forces. As Iran continues to exert influence over Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, it could be seen as playing the role of the aggressor in the biblical narrative, whether as a part of the Gog-Magog coalition or as its own independent force. The direction of Iran's military strategy makes it impossible to ignore the possibility that the ancient prophecy is being fulfilled before our eyes. Now, let's focus on a more hopeful aspect of the Bible's apocalyptic vision, the coming of the Messiah and the final peace that will emerge after the storm of war. For many, the idea of the Messiah's return is not just a spiritual concept, but a literal event that will transform the world. According to Christian theology, the Messiah will return to defeat evil and establish God's kingdom on earth, bringing peace and righteousness to all nations. This event is seen by many as the ultimate fulfillment of biblical prophecy and the resolution to the conflicts foretold in Ezekiel and Revelation. The Messiah's role in these prophecies is deeply intertwined with the fate of Israel. In Zechariah 14, it said that when the nations come against Israel in the final battle, the Lord will fight for Israel. Messiah's return will be a climactic moment, a turning point that ends the suffering of God as people and sets the stage for eternal peace. The promise of this divine intervention offers hope that even amidst the devastation of war, there will be an ultimate victory over evil. The return of the Messiah is not just a personal salvation story, it's a global transformation that promises to restore harmony and peace. But what does this mean for the modern world? For many believers, the signs of the times are clear. With escalating tensions in the Middle East, the rise of authoritarian regimes, and the increasing threats to Israel's security, it feels as though the stage is being set for the fulfillment of these ancient prophecies. However, there is still much debate among scholars about how the Messiah's return will actually unfold. Some argue that it's a literal event that will be witnessed by all, while others suggest it's a more spiritual manifestation that will bring about a new era of peace. Historians still argue whether the Messiah's return is something that will happen soon or if it is a distant event in the future. Some believe that Israel's struggles and eventual victory are prerequisites for the Messiah's arrival, while others think that the Messiah could come at any time. As tensions with Iran and other nations rise, many wonder if the world is witnessing the precursor to this divine intervention, which will ultimately result in the establishment of the New Jerusalem, a utopian city where peace reigns supreme. The prophecy of the final battle is not confined to Israel and Iran alone. It also involves other nations, some of which are still unknown or elusive, but whose roles in the conflict will be significant. According to the Bible, the world's superpowers will play a crucial part in the last war. And it's here that we see the rise of global alliances and the interplay between nations. In Revelation, the kings of the earth gather against Israel, representing a vast coalition of the world's powers coming to bear on the small nation. The United States, long a supporter of Israel, is often considered one of the pivotal players in this final war. However, recent geopolitical shifts have made it unclear how such alliances will play out in the end times. Many believe that the U.S., while allied with Israel, might not be as involved in the final battle as some have assumed. The question arises, will the U.S. maintain its position as a global leader, or will it be forced to take a back seat as other nations emerge with greater influence in global politics? Some even suggest that the U.S. could be sidelined entirely as other powers rise in prominence. One of the most interesting developments in this prophecy is the rise of China and its growing influence in the world. While not mentioned directly in the Bible, the political and military ambitions of China raise questions about how the nation will play a role in the end times. Some scholars speculate that China could be one of the kings of the East, described in Revelation 16:12, and its involvement in global politics. Particularly its interests in the Middle East may bring it into conflict with Israel in the final war. Beyond these superpowers, the Bible also mentions nations from the East, including those that may not yet be as politically influential, but are positioned geographically to be part of the final conflict. For instance, nations like Turkey, Syria, and even Egypt have a long-standing history of conflict with Israel, and their roles in this prophetic war seem to be already taking shape. With Iran in the mix, it's clear that the alliances and enmities in the Middle East are crucial to understanding how the battle will unfold. Historians still argue about which nations are involved in the final war and what their roles will be. While Israel and Iran are at the forefront, the alignment and involvement of other nations will ultimately shape the outcome. As new global alliances are formed and old tensions resurface, it's clear that the stage is being set for the battle that will define the end of days. As we near the conclusion of this incredible journey through biblical prophecy, let us step back and reflect on the ultimate resolution, the establishment of the New Jerusalem and the eternal peace that will follow the final battle. This concept of the New Jerusalem is central to many prophetic visions in both the Old and New Testaments. It's depicted as a city of unimaginable beauty, a place where God's presence will dwell among his people, and where peace, justice, and righteousness reign forever. In Revelation 21, John describes the New Jerusalem coming down from heaven, adorned like a bride for her husband. This vision promises the restoration of all things, the healing of nations, the end of suffering, and the ultimate triumph of good over evil. The prophecy states that there will be no more death, mourning, crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. The New Jerusalem represents the culmination of God's plan for the world, a world made new, where his will is done perfectly, and his people are at peace with him and with one another. But what does this mean for us today, especially in the context of the war between Israel and Iran? For many, this ultimate peace seems like a distant dream, but the Bible tells us that it is the final outcome after the storm of war. The prophecy assures believers that despite the conflicts, the struggles, and the dark days, God's promises will be fulfilled. This city of peace, this New Jerusalem, is the final hope for all of humanity, hope that transcends political tensions, global conflicts, and even death itself. In the final moments of the great battle, as the forces of Gog and Magog are defeated, Israel will be vindicated, and the people of God will be established in a land of peace. While there is much debate about the timeline of these events, whether they will unfold in our lifetime or whether they are still far off, the hope of the New Jerusalem remains a cornerstone of Christian eschatology. It's a promise that the ultimate victory will not be through human effort or military might, but through divine intervention, where God himself will wipe away every tear and bring about an eternal peace. Historians still argue whether the concept of the New Jerusalem is a literal place or a metaphorical representation of the perfect relationship between God and his people. Some believe it will be a physical city, while others interpret it as a symbol of God's reign on earth. Regardless of interpretation, one thing is clear: the peace and reconciliation it promises will be a victory for all of humanity. Peace that transcends the wars and conflicts that define so much of our world today. As the world watches the tensions between Israel and Iran and the surrounding nations, this prophecy offers both a sobering warning and a glimmer of hope. The final battle will come, but so will the ultimate peace. The New Jerusalem is the final destination, a promise of hope, restoration, and eternal peace.